It's a pleasure to have you here. So you're COO for SumTotal, Skillsoft Company. You see a lot of organizations. You work with a wide range of audiences. So some folks in this room, chief learning officers, but you work with CIOs, CHROs, chief talent officers, CFOs who are involved in what you're doing as well. So you see a lot of things from a broad perspective. Talent is, I think, one of the common denominators, one of the concerns for all of those audiences, the folks in this room as well as the people who are working with them, whether that's in executive suites or not. We've been talking about this so-called war for talent for a long time, for more than a decade, maybe 2 decades. Why, from your point of view, with that broad view, as you look at companies that you work with, why are we still struggling to answer this talent challenge in our organizations?
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard because it's multi-layered and multi-dimensional. There's so many different aspects to it. You think about, especially what I see out in the market, at the highest level of the organization, right? CEOs and boards are making talent a strategic initiative. It's not a tactic anymore. It's a strategic initiative. So on earnings calls, on board level meetings, they are trying to address that head on. And I look at that, I say, in my experience of talking with even C-levels or CEOs, what are they seeing? And I know there was a recent study, 74% of all CEOs now believe in investing in retaining employees, even at the risk of redundancy for a particular job or role. And I think the same study had 62% of those CEOs believed in additional training for that cross-knowledge, that cross-opportunity inside a company. So that's all great. At the highest level, you have this pressure, the strategic pressure on this initiative of talent, but at the employee level, at the workforce level, it's never been as hard as it is now. It's overwhelming. The data is overwhelming. I read a study that I think it's 150 is the average times a day you check your phone for either reading emails or responding to emails, right? And combine that with what's going on in the workplace with work-life balance and what we talk about that, or work-life integration, some people call it. But at the same time, less than 20% of companies are actually implementing programs to help simplify that. So that's the second aspect. I think the third is digital transformation, disruption with technology and what's going on with AI and the business transformation. And I would say that with that too, especially at Skillsoft SumTotal, we've just underwent a 2-year digital transformation. So it's amazing to see what happens when you put something in place. You've got to address the technology side of it, the people side of it, and a program side. But what you can get on the end is a great, agile, well-diverse balance of new talent and talents that's been reskilled. Yeah. But it's hard.
Yeah. So bottom line, it's hard. So we've been CEOs have said for a long time said that people are our most important asset. They haven't always acted that way. What you're arguing is that there is a need to do that, and they're doing it at a different level than perhaps, because you've done this for a couple decades. So you've seen this. How have you seen that emphasis change from a CEO perspective? Why is it different now than perhaps it was before?
Well, I think it's out of the demand. I think when you look at what talent wants culture, right? They want a workplace that drives that culture around productivity and collaboration. They want to understand how they get engaged better, right, and get more involved. I also think that CEOs and everybody in this room does a better job now, I think, in terms of upskilling, right? Because I think talent wants to be upskilled. I spent 20 years at SAP before I came to Skillsoft SumTotal 2.5 years ago. And I had the privilege of getting a lot of training and a lot of focus, but I also had probably a dozen jobs over 4 different lines of business. So professional services, software, industry, program management, and I also needed to be upskilled. maybe project management, maybe a leadership, development, things like that. So I think it's back to the future, if you will, a bit, and that some things don't change in that aspect, but focus and prioritization can certainly help, from the top down.
Yeah, and where you started was you were talking about sort of the bottom-up pressures of what talent's looking for. So, the digitization of the workplace and sort of what they bring into it. The need, they see themselves a need to upskill. If you could cut a bottom line it for chief learning officers, what do you see that they can do better for the people in their organization to be more successful? If you can kind of make it as concrete as possible there.
Okay. I think engaging technology, embracing it, right? It can be a hindrance or it can be a huge help. So I think engaging the technology that can help with the employees and the same demands that an employee has at home on an intuitive, engaging, beautiful technology that's frictionless, the more we leverage that internally, I think that can be a real asset. And I also think that the folks in this room, of course, as it relates to productivity and what we can do around the workforce productivity. I mean, the old saying, and people have talked for years about, on the leadership side around HR is the center of the universe for driving that workforce productivity. Matter of fact, Josh Burson told me one time that they should rename HR to, I think, the Department of Productivity, something like. So I think leveraging, those two things is big, in the way that we structure and go to market as an HR and as a CLO organization.
Yeah. All right. So technology, I think we saw from some of our own research that we just presented last night that technology competency is one of the things that CLOs feel like they need to be able to develop more to be successful in the future. But there's also that piece of technology, if you look at it from the talent side, that is completely reshaping our skill development. So technology can be an enabler for CLOs, but technology is also completely reshaping some of the skills that we need within our workforces. Can you speak to that? What are you seeing as far as the rise of AI and automation and technology and the effect that is having?
It's absolutely huge, because if you look at, I think there was a McKinsey study that talked about 375 million jobs that will be displaced due to automation, right? And how digital transformation affects that. So those people have to get reskilled, focus on other things, or leverage that technology in some way. And I think it's a responsible imperative by the government and HR organizations to really take that research seriously and get in front of it. Because if not, you could have a lot of gender and minority groups at the lower scales that are impacted from this new automated, workplace. So I think we have to get in front of it, and the technology to train and learn has got to stay on the forefront of adopting those technologies and preparing the workforce for it.
Where do you personally go to stay up to date on technologies? Obviously, you're in a technology business. That's part of what you do. But, in the rest of your life, what do you do to sort of make sure that you're staying on top of where things are headed?
Well, is this intended to be a softball for our IT content portfolio? We have a beautiful digital.
It was not, but yeah.
No, we at Skillsoft, we do take that very serious, just in terms of getting ahead of what's on deck, on the digital side. But look, I think the beautiful thing about the internet and being able to leverage all the readings that are out there is getting in front of the trends, looking at the studies that actually make us smarter in how we're going to run our business. I mean, the way that I have to run my business is based on data. And I have to use the data that customers, many of you here in the room are our customers, are telling us, both in terms of satisfaction of how the software works, but what, more importantly, where the software is going, what you want next. How do we anticipate that and making it frictionless and better for you?
All right, so to kind of close out our time here together, I know you're not a chief learning officer. That's not your background, even though you work with a lot of the folks in this room. But we're spending a couple days talking about how you develop yourself as CLO. As you look at the role from outside in and from all that experience that you have, what career advice do you have for chief learning officers as they're looking to advance their career?
I think I think one of the things that helped me in the past, and you're right, I haven't been this, but in the past when I wanted to learn on a job rotation or to do something, I really sat down with different stakeholders in the business to learn about what they do, the responsibilities and activities with that organization and those roles, how they're measured. So when I sat down with a sales or a marketing team or a finance or HR operations or DevOps or whatever it might be, I wanted to understand what makes them tick, what matters, what do you care about? So I would encourage this team and everybody here, as you want to expand your horizon, ask those questions, develop those questions that you're curious about around other organizational functions, because in reality, that might serve as a rotation for you in some future life, or it might make you better as a CLO.